What's up, growers? Welcome back to What Grows Around Comes Around. I'm happy to be here with you in the garden. Today we have an interesting episode for you. We're going to be kind of revisiting episode 1. Okay, so we're going to be going over everything that we have here and all the progress that has been made since we started the channel. So I'm very excited to show you some new things and some old things that have grown. I'm going to go over a few things that have worked, a few things that haven't worked. But yeah, without further ado, fertilize that like button and let's get into it. Alright guys, so we're going to start in the front yard. So in the front yard we have our plants that like full sun, as it's about, well, there isn't a cloud in the sky today and it is really hot here in South Florida. So what we have in the front yard, okay, so we have right here, we have the Plumeria plant that we showed you back in episode 1. It's grown a lot, it's been through a lot, it went through a lot of stress, but it's looking really nice. We're still waiting for it to flower, but this one is a variety that comes from Hawaii, and we just really like the plant. It's a nice ornamental to have. Next to it over here, I've moved some things around. This used to be on the patio, but this is known as a yellow alder. This plant, I don't think we've covered it yet, but it makes these little buttercup flowers, so you'll commonly hear this called like a dwarf buttercup or like an alternative buttercup or Mexican buttercup. But anyway, it's called a yellow alder, and it kind of grows like a weed. It propagates a lot of themselves and throws seeds everywhere, but you know, it's a pretty flower. This is one of our sunflowers. This is the one that has the weird sunflower heads growing out the side of it. And honestly, these plants should at this point not exist anymore, but this one's going strong, producing more flowers. It's kind of interesting. I have no idea why it's doing that. We're over here on the other side of the front yard, guys, and we have a little bit more of what we had in the first half. So here's one of those sunflowers that we had harvested back in the sunflower video. So it is beheaded, and we left it in because honestly I can't get rid of it until it dies. That'd be rude. Okay, would I get rid of you if you weren't dead? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. Okay, so I'm not going to do that to this guy. It'd be wrong. So anyway, all joking aside, right here we have another one of the yellow alders. This one I really like because it grew from seed, so you know, I actually watched it grow up. And also, it's just growing really nicely. It's not straggly or anything, and I think that's mostly because we moved it to full sun right away. Whereas the other plants we left in the shade before I really knew what the plant even was, and once I figured it out, I'm like, oh no, it's a full sun plant. It's going to be much brighter green and everything if it's in the full sun. Over here, there's another one. If you want to take a look at that one. And then down here, we have our Wandering Jew plants. I forget the scientific name, honestly, but I will post it in the description below. There's one here. And then there's my favorite one over here. This one's growing really well, and I don't know if you can tell down here, but the pot it's in is basically a pair of pants. It has some moss growing all over it, but you get the idea. They're pants, so it's kind of neat. And the last plant we have over here, well, not the last one, but the last one that you could really see, this is a different variety of Plumeria. This one, I was told, is called a Grangipani. I don't know why that's what it's called, but there you go. So this one kind of just grows like crazy. It grows a whole bunch of leaves, and like the other one, it still hasn't produced any flowers yet, but we're waiting on it. And of course, when it does flower, I'll have it on Instagram and on Facebook, so make sure you're watching out for that. Okay guys, so down here we have these giant sunflowers, and they're not giant right now, but trust me, they will be. Their species is giant sunflower. They're gonna get about 12 feet tall. They're gonna produce heads that are about a foot wide, and that's gonna happen in a couple months. So we're really excited for that, because I don't know if you guys remember from the other video, we had very small sunflower seeds that we harvested, and while that was good as a little trial, they didn't produce a good snack. They kind of burned because they were too small and there wasn't anything in them really anyway. So giant sunflowers, and they're going to be transplanted behind the hedge over there once they get a little bit bigger. We tried to plant them behind the hedge before, and what had happened was the sun wasn't bright enough back there until they get above the hedge level, and they died. So yep, they died. Real sad. We're down here on the sidewalk where I keep some of our little plants. So these we showed you in the fruit tree episode. This guy is a baby lemon tree. This guy is a baby mango tree. And then over there we have some baby grapefruit trees. So they're all about 2 months old at this point. They're a bit slow growing. They are growing, don't get me wrong, they're just a little bit slow. But we're not going to make fun of anybody for being slow now, are we? So I'm happy with their progress. We did lose a few along the way, either to it being just simply too hot, or the genetics of the specific seed just not really working out, or what have you. But yeah, they're growing, and hopefully in 5-6 years we'll have trees, and that'll be great. Now I will say, for fruit trees, I should have said this in the last video, or in the fruit trees video, they do take a really long time. So guys, if you're expecting fruit in any reasonable amount of time, maybe just go buy one from the nursery. The reason I'm doing it this way is honestly it's really fun to watch something grow up all the way. So, you know, I have time. I'm not planning on dying in the next 5 years, so I'll get to see them. The other plants we have down here are, we have this basil, and this is our sweet basil that was almost totally dead before, and I really think it's doing a good job coming back. I don't know what you guys think. But yeah, so it was dying because we had a lot of heavy rain, and I had assumed that the basil plants were fine with the heavy rain, but you know, they really weren't. So it didn't do too well, but it's recovered almost fully, so I'm really happy with that. And then next to it we have our pineapple that we've showcased for you before. It continues to overtake the top. See this top, how it's, you know, by comparison less than half the size of the sucker now? This thing is going to die soon. And when it does, all that's left will be this plant. And then in a while, we're gonna have a pineapple. So we're over here on the porch now, and we have some other really cool plants here for you. So first, we have our baby apple tree that was also showcased in the fruit tree episode. This is the only remaining apple tree we have. The others, the genetics just didn't work out. They just kind of got stunted and died. But this one seems to have survived infancy, and will hopefully grow into an apple tree in a really, really long time. Above it, we got our money tree, and this is probably the most prolific grower we have on the property. This plant started as a braided money tree. I don't know if you can see it all the way down there, the braiding that was on there originally. But now we kind of just let it grow into a tree, as it really would be in the wild. And it is doing fantastic. You'll notice up here that the leaves are really tiny, and they will grow, but they're growing slower. The reason that's happening is because this pot is too small, and we're going to transplant the pot very soon. Or we'll transplant the plant. We won't transplant the pot, but you know. So we'll fix that, and then this straggliness will stop, hopefully. But the plant is doing really well as a whole. Next to it, down here, and I'll rotate it for you. That is our aloe vera variegata. It looks like it needs to be repotted fully. We had potted this one in the plant propagation episode, and now, well, it's just grown so much that the pot is just not really able to handle it. It's so unsteady in that pot that we kind of want to put it lower down in a larger pot, and it'll make it a lot more stable. Alright guys, so I'm really excited to show you the plants over here in these planters. So we have not addressed the herbs that we're growing at all, and that's a shame because they're some of our best growers. This right here is our Italian oregano. This plant, I honestly wish you could smell it. I mean, if you like oregano, let me just say, you're smelling some oregano right now, okay? So this plant is growing out of control, I will be honest. We have topped this plant 4 or 5 times, and from that, we have gotten so much oregano that we don't buy anymore at all. And not only do we not buy anymore, we can probably have the nearest 5 neighbors not buy anymore. So oregano kind of grows like a weed, and that's why we have so much of it. Next to it, we have our rosemary. This plant is doing really well, but it's not growing very fast. It is growing, and it's started to pick up the pace. I don't really know why it's not growing very fast, but I'm assuming as long as it's healthy, it's doing well. We've used some of it, but because it's so small, we're kind of holding off and, you know, not using too much of it. Sorry about the truck in the background. Let's continue with some of the ornamentals we have on the porch here. So this one we've shown before, but not in its glory right now. This is our desert rose. Unfortunately, it's not flowering right now, but it looks really nice, and This is one of those plants that you have to make sure you don't overwater. I know I tend to tell people to make sure you don't forget to water things, but this is the exact opposite. Don't overwater your plants if they don't naturally live in a wet environment. And since this is a desert plant, it comes from Central Africa, well, that tells the story, doesn't it? Now down here, we have our calancho. This is also from Africa, but this plant is from Madagascar. This one, I think in the first video we showed, it had a lot of pink flowers, and it will in the future. It's just, again, it's really, really hot, so it's kind of tough for flowers to survive right now. But it looks fantastic. It's one of our healthiest plants on the property, and we're looking forward to it getting bigger and bigger and more filled with pretty flowers. Here we have our flamingo lily. So this plant is absolutely growing like insane, like just crazy. So it's really full. I don't know if you can see in that just how full it really is. There's a lot of shoots. This plant's really interesting because it grows individual shoots from the ground over and over. Instead of, you know how plants normally will fork and grow taller, this one just keeps going from the ground level. So it won't get too tall, but it will just keep thickening up more and more to the point where we'll probably have to start manually thinning it so it doesn't choke itself out. But we're really happy with that one. And then to the right over here, we have our giant Barbados aloe. This one is growing a lot of little babies. I'll rotate it for you so show you. See all these babies here? Look at all these guys. There's just so many of them. And what's interesting is that they're growing babies that look variegated, which suggests to me that this one and that aloe back there were, you know, doing some things we're not supposed to discuss. So, anywho, we got a lot of extra aloes, so hey, maybe in the future we'll start giving plants away. I don't know. We'll figure that part out. But for now, we have a giant plant and a lot of little babies. Hey guys, so now we're over here with our starfruit cups, and you're probably like, what starfruit cups? Because they're just cups of dirt. And yeah, you're right. Yep, they're cups of dirt. But that is because these ones down here were planted yesterday, literally last night, and that is because I was afraid that the ones we planted on camera aren't growing. And the reason I think they might not be growing is because they dried out. Yep. They dried out. I didn't think they dried out fully, but it's possible they did. So that's more of an insurance policy than anything. It's not to say that they're not going to grow. It's just to say that if we have, I don't know, like 13 instead of 6, we have higher odds. So yeah, well, there you go. And then here we have pothos plants. These are starts that I planted myself. They were taken from another pothos plant that we're going to show you very soon on this video. Don't worry. And these ones are going to be used to spread pothos throughout the whole house, basically. Not literally, but, you know, mostly. This one's going in my room because I like it. So, yeah, so these are really cool plants. These things will live in any conditions at all, literally any conditions. You know, put them in the dark, put them in the light, put them outside, put them in the bathroom. Maybe don't do that, but, you know, they're going to live anywhere. So, as mentioned, I have the original Devil's Ivy, or pothos plant for you. It's actually right next to me. So this plant was one of the best success stories that we have growing here. So it was a very thin line of nearly dead vine plant, and well, now it's this. Yep, it's going crazy. We planted some new starts down at the bottom to fill it in. That's why this looks so thick. Pothos plants and most vines tend to not branch at all. They just kind of grow and grow and grow in one line. So we have it snaking all the way around, and then to make it thicker, we actually put more vines in, and what that'll do is it'll make it look really nice. So we're really happy with this. This plant was actually a plant from my grandfather, and he's been gone for over 7 years now. So this plant, well, since it was his, you know, it's really nice to see that it's still alive and doing well. So, you know, kind of like a sentimental plant for us, but we're really happy with it. Next to it down there, we have our strawberry plant, or the very last one, but that one seems to actually be growing. I believe the reason it's growing now is because down below this, down here, I don't know if you can see, so I actually have a tray of water that is making sure that this plant never dries out. And with the plant never drying out, it seems to have kept that one alive, and the reason I'm very confident with that plant is because it actually started growing new leaves. All the others are dead, so yeah, that one's not. And the last plant we have over there, that's our spearmint. That thing's really tiny. It was bigger. I put it in the sun. It didn't like it. It almost died, and now it's coming back. So that plant will hopefully take off like a weed, because mint is effectively a weed. If you've ever put it in your garden space anywhere, don't. Or you've already known what's wrong with it. It's going to take over everything. Literally everything. So be careful with mint. With gardening, there comes failures. This is one of those failures. This is the mango plant that I was really excited about on week 1, day 1 of this channel. It died. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure what killed it, because the mango that we had showed you earlier was doing fine, and we've had them in pretty much the same conditions. It's possible that this one wasn't transplanted to full sun in time, and it just didn't have enough energy to go on. But this plant was doing really well, and it just stopped working. But don't be discouraged. You're gonna have mess-ups. You're gonna have mess-ups in the garden. You're gonna have mess-ups in life. So you have to work through those things, and eventually, you know, you're gonna have success stories too that are gonna way outweigh the failures. So you keep at it and don't give up. And then also another plant that I wanted to show you right here. This is a papaya that my buddy up in Melbourne gave me. This plant here it's actually older than it looks. He had it in a relatively small pot, and I would say that that's probably not the pot for this plant. So we're gonna transplant this and make this one look as healthy as the one we have in the backyard. We'll probably move it to the backyard too, in hopes that they'll cross-pollinate and actually produce papayas. Guys, we're here in the backyard now, and we're here with our pepper plants. These right here, these tall two, these are cayenne pepper plants. They are loaded with cayenne peppers. So it'd be kind of weird if they were loaded with some other kind of pepper. But yeah, they're loaded with cayenne peppers. They're not fully grown yet, but they're coming along really well, and we're gonna have a lot of peppers. I'm not really sure what to do with that many peppers, because that one's loaded and this one's loaded, and this one's actually loaded even more. You know, you can probably see it even without zooming in. But fortunately, we have a good camera woman who will zoom in for us and give us nice close-ups like this. This one is a banana pepper. This is the one that actually produced banana peppers. We showed it on Instagram and on Facebook. The plant got screwed over by cutworms, but we repotted it in rooting hormone. And after doing that, it's come back. It's not only come back, but there's actually a flower bud on here somewhere. Yeah, it's right there. It's really tiny. You won't really be able to see it. It's right in there. But the plant's coming back, and if the plant grew banana peppers like a month before any other pepper even showed signs of flowers, this plant should be back to full strength in no time. Back here are the 3 peppers that I grew from seed myself. These peppers are jalapenos. They are, I believe they're semi-hot jalapenos. They have dealt with, you know, the Florida heat and the pests and everything else that we got here, and they've come out on the other side strong as ever. So we're looking for jalapenos very soon. They did start flowering, and as peppers usually do, the first few flowers don't make it, as the plant's just kind of trying to grow and establish itself. But eventually it's going to turn into what the cayenne pepper is doing, and we're going to get tons of jalapenos as well. Behind me, guys, we have our tomatoes that we moved over here. They're behind me, but really, I mean, they're above me. And then we have the littler one, whoa, right here. This one was the same age as that one, but cutworms got to it as well. So did the Florida heat, and it ended up getting set back. But since then, it's honestly growing faster than the big one. It's growing like an absolute weed. It's really tall in its own right. But this big one is producing tomatoes. So these are sweet red cherry tomatoes, and they take not as much time as whole tomatoes to grow all the way, but they still take time, so you got to be patient with these things. But we're looking forward to these 5 tomatoes that are coming up now, and I don't know if you can see up here, there's flower sets all over this plant. There's even flower sets down here that might start producing more tomatoes. So as the weather cools down, we're going to get more and more productivity out of not just these plants, but pretty much all the plants, because in Florida it's really, really, really hot during the summer, and plants don't do as well. They have to focus on survival. And then in between the tomatoes, we have our Weigela variegata. This is my favorite ornamental plant that we have, that or the desert rose. It's just a really pretty plant. It's just a shrub, but it's got these nice white patterns on the leaves, and it grows very prolifically. Hey guys, so we have some pretty neat plants below me down here. These ones are our bromeliads. They are star something bromeliads. That's the scientific name, trust me. No, it'll be in description, don't worry. But we moved them back here because they really don't like the full direct sun that they were getting. You can see what the sun does to them. So when you have bromeliads, make sure that you don't put them in full sun, and then they'll start growing like this instead of like this. So we have 2 of them. They both are doing really well now, as you can see by the insides of the plants, and they're going to just continue getting stronger, and eventually they'll start producing flowers for us. So there's a few more plants I want to show you before we wrap up our tour. So if you follow me back here, we have our dwarf umbrella tree here. This thing is kind of growing out of control. We're probably going to need to repot it, or honestly it should just be planted in the ground. It's a shrub. But growing out of control means it's growing really well, so we're happy with it. It looks pretty. Also next to it we have our crown of thorns that had all that scale problem that it no longer has, which is really sweet. We treated it with organic pesticide, and now it's looking pretty nice. Again, the flowering is not at its peak because, as I've said 67 times, it's too hot. But it will come back. The important part is that the foliage is looking fantastic. So we're happy with that plant. And we're also really happy with this papaya. This papaya is actually the same age as the papaya we showed you up front that I just got as a gift. But this one has been repotted. It's been given organic fertilizer, and it's been left in the space that is conducive to its growth. As a result, you get a plant that's taller than I am. Not that I'm that tall, but you know, it's pretty good. We take what we get. So, papaya. I'm over here chilling with our blackberry plant. Blackberry is growing pretty well. It's slowed down because it needs to be repotted, but the plant is doing fantastic, and we're looking for a really big harvest of blackberries next season. So what I did since you last saw it is I staked the plant with a 8-foot tall garden stake, and I have the main stem, or the cane, of the blackberry growing up it, and then I have these laterals just allowed to kind of grow off the side. This one I might have to prune back, but you don't want to prune your blackberries until the season's over, you know, in about a month or 2, maybe in October I would shoot for. So you prune it back then, and then it's going to shoot up with more canes every year, and honestly it's going to outgrow this really fast. You do want to top your blackberries just so you can manage them when you're picking, but yeah, if you do the right things for the blackberry plant, you're going to get a very, very large bounty of blackberries every year. The very last thing that I wanted to show you before we end today, guys, is the results of last video, because I know I said I would. So this is that tomato sucker that we planted in our tomato cloning video. It is doing absolutely fantastic. We put the rooting hormone on that, and we planted it in here, and we just set it over where the other tomatoes are, and all those steps together produced a 3rd tomato plant. So honestly, we're going to end up with a heck of a lot of tomatoes. Now the cool part about this, though, is that since this plant is young, it's effectively like we're starting the tomato a month delayed from the other ones, so we're going to get produce, you know, we're going to extend our season basically. We're going to get produce throughout the whole growing season instead of just when those other tomatoes produce. So I'm super happy with that. It was a pleasure showing you our updates in the garden. We have had a lot of fun getting to this point in the garden, and I'm really looking forward to the future of not just the garden, but also the channel and the community that we're building together. So guys, I hope that if you have anything to say or anything to add, or you want to just ask me a question about what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, or what you can do, or anything like that, just let me know in the comments. You can even let me know in the channel description. You can do it wherever you want. Just get in contact with me. I even have an email. And we'll help you get your garden off the ground, and we'll talk about anything that you're interested in. So like I said, I'm really excited going forward. I'm hoping to see not just this tomato, but all the other plants growing eventually lead to really nice harvests. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys like the video. Subscribe if you want to see more. Tell your friends, get our name out there, and yeah, until next time, we'll see ya.